There was a time when dinner didn't take an hour, a long grocery list, or complicated recipes. In kitchens across America, busy families turned to one trusted name printed on countless cookbooks and recipe cards. These were the quick suppers that filled tables during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, simple, affordable meals that could be made in minutes but still tasted like comfort. Many of them came straight from old Betty Crocker kitchen guides that promised fast dinners for hard-working families. Today, most of these dishes have quietly disappeared, but once upon a time, they were weeknight lifesavers. Let's step back into those kitchens and rediscover 10 cheap suppers almost nobody cooks anymore. Chicken a la king on toast. Few quick dinners from vintage American kitchens carried the same comforting reputation as chicken a la king on toast. By the 1950s and 1960s, this creamy chicken dish had become a familiar sight in many households, especially in homes that relied on quick and practical meals during busy evenings. The recipe itself was simple but satisfying. Cooked chicken was mixed into a creamy sauce made from butter, milk, and a little flour to thicken everything together. Sweet green peas and diced pimentos were often added, bringing both color and flavor to the dish. Once the sauce was ready, it was poured generously over toasted bread, warm biscuits, or sometimes fluffy rice. Part of what made this supper so popular was how flexible and inexpensive it was. Leftover roasted chicken from the night before could easily be turned into an entirely new meal. With only a few pantry ingredients, a filling dinner could be ready in about 10 minutes. Vintage cookbooks from the Betty Crocker kitchens often recommended this dish as a dependable weeknight solution for families who needed something fast but comforting. During that era, many mothers balanced busy schedules while still trying to put warm meals on the table every evening. Recipes like chicken a la king made that possible. The creamy texture, mild flavor, and simple ingredients made it especially popular with children. It wasn't fancy restaurant food. It was everyday comfort served on toast at the family dinner table. Yet over time, as food trends shifted and convenience meals changed, this once famous supper slowly faded from everyday cooking. Many younger generations have never even heard of it. But in countless American homes decades ago, chicken a la king on toast was more than just dinner. It was a quick solution, a comforting meal, and a small reminder that even simple food could bring a family together at the table. Tuna noodle skillet supper. Long before modern meal kits and frozen dinners filled grocery store aisles, many American families relied on humble pantry staples to put supper on the table. One of the most dependable of these quick meals was the tuna noodle skillet supper, a dish that quietly fed millions of households during the 1950s, 60s, and even into the early 70s. The magic of this supper was its simplicity. A can of tuna, a handful of egg noodles, a little milk, and a creamy soup base were usually all it took to bring the dish together. Everything was cooked in a single skillet, making it perfect for busy evenings when families needed dinner ready fast. Canned tuna became extremely popular after World War II because it was affordable, shelf-stable, and easy to store. Many households kept several cans in the pantry at all times. That made this meal a reliable option when the refrigerator looked empty but dinner still had to be made. Once the noodles softened and the creamy sauce thickened, the tuna was folded in gently so the pieces stayed tender. Some families added peas, while others sprinkled crushed crackers or breadcrumbs on top for a little extra texture. Cookbooks from the Betty Crocker kitchens frequently recommended quick skillet meals like this for weeknight dinners. They promised a warm, filling supper that could feed an entire family in minutes without complicated preparation. What made the dish truly special wasn't fancy ingredients. It was the comfort of a hot meal shared around the table after a long day. The creamy noodles and mild tuna flavor created a simple, familiar taste that many children grew up loving. Over time, however, food trends shifted and many of these easy skillet suppers quietly disappeared from everyday cooking. But decades ago, tuna noodle skillet supper wasn't forgotten at all. It was one of the small, reliable dinners that kept American families fed during busy nights. Beef stroganoff skillet supper. During the mid-20th century, American kitchens discovered a faster way to enjoy a dish that once sounded elegant and foreign. Beef stroganoff, inspired by a Russian recipe, slowly transformed into a simple skillet supper that busy families could prepare in minutes. By the 1960s and 1970s, quick versions of this creamy beef dish appeared in countless home kitchens. The classic homemade version used tender strips of beef cooked in a rich sour cream sauce with mushrooms and onions. But vintage Betty Crocker cookbooks helped simplify the idea. Instead of complicated steps, families could make a quicker version using ground beef, pantry seasonings, and egg noodles cooked right in the skillet. The method was wonderfully practical. Ground beef was browned with onions, then combined with a creamy sauce made from broth, milk, and sour cream. Mushrooms were often added for flavor, though many families skipped them if they weren't on hand. Finally, cooked egg noodles were folded into the mixture, turning everything into a hearty one-pan supper. The appeal of this dish was both comfort and convenience. It tasted rich and satisfying, yet it required only simple ingredients that most households already had in the kitchen. For families trying to stretch their grocery budget, this meal offered something warm, filling, and dependable. During that era, recipes like this were promoted as modern cooking solutions. They promised the flavor of traditional dishes but with far less time and effort. For parents managing busy schedules, that promise mattered. Children loved the creamy noodles and savory beef, while adults appreciated how quickly the meal came together. Within about 10 minutes, a full dinner could be ready. Today, many younger cooks associate beef stroganoff with boxed helpers or restaurant menus. But decades ago, this skillet version was a quiet weeknight hero, bringing comforting flavors to dinner tables across America. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Among the quickest suppers to ever appear in American kitchens, few were as simple or as memorable as creamed chipped beef on toast. For many families in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, this humble dish was a familiar sight on the dinner table, especially when time and money were both limited. The meal relied on one unusual pantry staple: dried beef. Thin slices of salted, preserved beef were sold in small glass jars and could last for months in the cupboard. Because it was inexpensive and easy to store, many households kept it on hand for quick meals. Preparing the dish was remarkably fast. Butter was melted in a skillet, then flour and milk were added to create a smooth, creamy white sauce. The dried beef slices were chopped into smaller pieces and stirred into the sauce, giving it a salty, savory flavor. Within minutes, the mixture thickened into a rich topping ready to be served. The final step was pouring the hot, creamy beef over toasted bread. The toast absorbed the sauce while still holding its shape, turning the simple ingredients into a warm and filling supper. This dish also carried a strong connection to American military history. Soldiers during World War II were often served a similar meal in Army mess halls. Because of that, many veterans later recognized the flavor immediately when it appeared in home kitchens after the war. Vintage cookbooks frequently recommended this recipe as a quick emergency dinner, something that could be prepared when the pantry was nearly empty but a hot meal was still needed. Despite its once widespread popularity, creamed chipped beef on toast slowly faded from everyday cooking as food habits changed. But decades ago, this modest dish was more than just a quick supper. It was a reminder that even the simplest ingredients could feed a hungry family. Ham and peas cream skillet. In many American kitchens of the 1950s and 1960s, leftovers were never wasted. Instead, they were transformed into quick, comforting meals that could feed the entire family in minutes. One of the most common examples of this practical cooking was the ham and peas cream skillet, a simple supper that relied on ingredients many households already had. The dish often began with leftover ham from a weekend roast or holiday dinner. Small cubes of ham were tossed into a skillet with butter and gently warmed until their smoky flavor filled the kitchen. Then a quick cream sauce was made by stirring flour and milk together in the same pan, creating a thick, velvety base. Sweet green peas were the final touch. Their bright color and mild sweetness balanced the salty ham perfectly. Within a few minutes, the skillet held a creamy mixture that smelled comforting and familiar. Families served this dish in several ways. Some spooned it over toasted bread, while others poured it across biscuits or warm mashed potatoes. No matter how it was served, the result was a filling supper that could be prepared incredibly fast. Recipes like this appeared often in vintage Betty Crocker meal guides because they solved a common problem for busy households: how to turn leftovers into a completely new dinner. Instead of cooking an entirely different meal, families could stretch what they already had. For parents managing busy evenings, the ham and peas cream skillet became a dependable solution. It required only a few minutes of cooking and almost no complicated preparation. Over time, as convenience foods and packaged dinners became more common, many of these quick leftover-based meals quietly disappeared from regular cooking routines. But decades ago, this creamy ham and peas skillet was more than just a practical supper. It was proof that a warm, satisfying meal could come together quickly with nothing more than a few simple ingredients. Quick salmon patties with cream sauce. In the middle decades of the 20th century, canned foods played a major role in American home cooking. They were affordable, easy to store, and could quickly turn into a warm meal when time was short. One of the most dependable pantry staples was canned salmon, and from it came a simple supper many families knew well: salmon patties with cream sauce. The idea was wonderfully straightforward. A can of salmon was opened and mixed with breadcrumbs or crushed crackers, along with an egg to hold everything together. A little onion, salt, and pepper were often added for flavor. The mixture was shaped into small patties and placed into a hot skillet with butter or oil. Within minutes, the patties turned golden brown on the outside while remaining tender on the inside. The aroma of frying salmon filled the kitchen, signaling that dinner was almost ready. To make the dish even more comforting, many households prepared a quick cream sauce. Butter, flour, and milk were stirred together in a small pan until the mixture thickened into a smooth white gravy. Once finished, the warm sauce was poured over the salmon patties just before serving. These patties were often served alongside simple sides like mashed potatoes, buttered peas, or sliced bread. Because the ingredients were inexpensive and easy to keep in the pantry, this supper became a dependable choice for many families trying to stretch their grocery budgets. Vintage Betty Crocker kitchen guides frequently included recipes for salmon patties, praising them as a practical weeknight dinner that could be prepared quickly without complicated steps. Over time, however, cooking habits changed and dishes like this slowly faded from regular family meals. But for many households decades ago, salmon patties were more than just a quick dinner. They were a reminder that simple pantry ingredients could still create a warm and satisfying meal. Ground beef and gravy over biscuits. In many American kitchens during the 1950s and 1960s, ground beef was one of the most dependable ingredients a family could keep in the refrigerator. It was affordable, easy to cook, and could quickly turn into a filling meal. One simple supper that grew popular during this time was ground beef and gravy served over warm biscuits. The preparation was wonderfully straightforward. A pound of ground beef was browned in a skillet, often with a little chopped onion to add flavor. As the meat cooked, the kitchen would fill with the rich aroma of sizzling beef. Once the meat was fully browned, flour was sprinkled into the pan and stirred gently with the beef. Milk or broth was then added slowly, creating a thick, savory gravy that coated every piece of meat. Within just a few minutes, the mixture transformed into a hearty, creamy sauce that looked simple but tasted incredibly comforting. The final step was spooning the hot beef and gravy over freshly baked biscuits. The soft biscuits soaked up the rich sauce, turning the meal into something warm and satisfying. Some families even used store-bought refrigerated biscuits to make the process faster. Meals like this appeared often in mid-century home cooking guides because they solved an everyday problem: how to make a filling dinner quickly without expensive ingredients. Ground beef stretched easily to feed several people, making it perfect for households watching their grocery budgets. For children, The dish was especially comforting. The soft biscuits and savory gravy created a mild, familiar flavor that felt like pure home cooking. Although it was once a common weeknight supper, this dish slowly disappeared as modern convenience foods and new cooking trends changed the way families prepared dinner. But decades ago, ground beef and gravy over biscuits was more than just a quick meal. It was simple comfort served straight from the skillet. Cheesy chicken and rice skillet. In the kitchens of 1950s and 1960s America, busy families often relied on one-pan meals that were quick, filling, and made use of simple ingredients. One of the most popular solutions was the cheesy chicken and rice skillet, a dish that combined creamy cheese, tender chicken, and fluffy rice into a single comforting supper. The recipe was designed for convenience. Leftover cooked chicken or rotisserie-style chicken was shredded and added to a skillet with butter and onions. A simple sauce was created by mixing milk, flour, and a touch of seasoning, then stirred until it thickened into a smooth, creamy base. Cooked rice was folded in along with generous amounts of shredded cheese, usually cheddar, which melted into the mixture, creating a rich and hearty texture. Many vintage cookbooks, including those from Crocker, praised this dish for its speed and practicality. It could be ready in under 10 minutes if the chicken and rice were already prepared, making it ideal for weeknights when families wanted a hot meal without the hassle of a full dinner preparation. The appeal of the cheesy chicken and rice skillet went beyond convenience. Children loved the creamy, cheesy texture, while parents appreciated how quickly it came together and how it used leftovers effectively. The combination of warm rice, tender chicken, and gooey cheese made it a satisfying comfort food that filled hungry bellies in minutes. Over the years, however, this one-pan skillet supper slowly faded from modern kitchens as new convenience foods and frozen dinners became more popular. Yet in its heyday, it was a reliable and beloved meal for countless American families. For those who grew up with it, the cheesy chicken and rice skillet wasn't just a quick dinner. It was a taste of home, a reminder of simpler evenings spent gathered around the table, enjoying warmth and comfort in every bite. Tomato hamburger skillet supper. During the 1960s and 1970s, one of the most practical and comforting meals a family could make involved a humble can of tomatoes and a pound of ground beef. The tomato hamburger skillet supper became a staple in countless American kitchens, known for its simplicity, affordability, and quick preparation. The recipe began with browning ground beef in a skillet, often accompanied by onions for extra flavor. Once the meat was cooked, canned tomatoes were added, sometimes with tomato paste or a splash of ketchup, along with a pinch of salt, pepper, and other simple seasonings. The mixture simmered for a few minutes, allowing the savory flavors to meld together, producing a rich, slightly tangy sauce that coated every morsel of beef. Some families added peas, corn, or even cooked rice directly into the skillet, making the dish stretch further and feed more mouths. Others served it over buttered toast, noodles, or biscuits, depending on what was available in the kitchen. This supper was especially popular among busy households because it required minimal ingredients, little hands-on cooking time, and produced a meal that was both hearty and filling. Vintage Crocker cookbooks often included similar skillet recipes, praising their speed and practicality for weeknight dinners. Children enjoyed the familiar tomato flavor paired with beef, while adults appreciated how efficiently it transformed simple pantry staples into a complete meal. In many homes, it became a trusted fallback whenever the refrigerator looked bare or when time was too short to prepare more elaborate dinners. Over the decades, as new convenience foods and frozen meals gained popularity, the tomato hamburger skillet supper quietly disappeared from everyday cooking. But back then, it wasn't just a simple dinner. It was a reliable, comforting meal that brought warmth to the family table, proving that even the simplest ingredients could create something delicious. Egg and cheese supper scramble. In the post-war American kitchen, breakfast foods often found their way onto the dinner table, and one quick favorite was the egg and cheese supper scramble. By the 1950s and 1960s, this simple dish had earned a reputation as a fast, affordable and comforting weeknight meal that required very little preparation. The dish began with a handful of eggs, beaten and seasoned lightly with salt and pepper. Butter or a bit of oil was heated in a skillet, and the eggs were poured in, cooking quickly over medium heat. As the eggs began to set, shredded cheese, often cheddar or American, was sprinkled over the top, melting into the soft, warm eggs to create a creamy, flavorful mixture. Many families added small extras, like chopped green onions, diced ham, or leftover vegetables, to stretch the dish further and add variety. In some households, the scramble was served alongside toast or warm biscuits, while in others, it was eaten directly from the skillet, steaming and hearty. Betty Crocker cookbooks of the era highlighted the simplicity of such egg-based suppers, emphasizing that even the busiest parent could prepare a nourishing meal in under 10 minutes. The egg and cheese scramble was also a favorite for children who loved the soft, cheesy texture and the comforting, familiar taste. What made this meal particularly valuable was its versatility. Eggs were inexpensive, widely available, and cooked so quickly that even a last-minute dinner could become a satisfying, complete supper. It became a go-to solution for families juggling busy schedules, ensuring that everyone had a warm, homemade meal without stress or fuss. Though largely forgotten today, decades ago the egg and cheese supper scramble was more than a quick dish. It was a symbol of practicality, comfort, and the warmth of a family gathered around the dinner table, enjoying a simple but satisfying meal together. After decades of disappearing from kitchen counters and family tables, these quick Betty Crocker suppers remind us of a simpler time when meals were affordable, comforting, and made with love. Each dish tells a story of busy parents, resourceful homemakers, and children eagerly gathering around the table, savoring every bite of something warm and familiar. While modern kitchens may have moved on to convenience foods and frozen dinners, these recipes carry a nostalgic charm that deserves to be remembered. If these meals bring back memories or inspire you to try them, don't forget to share your thoughts and subscribe for more forgotten American recipes.